Jackson had always been fascinated by the strange corners of the galaxy. The markets on outer planets were his favorite places, crowded, noisy, and full of things no human could ever imagine. On one of these markets, he wandered past stalls selling food, machines, and even creatures that looked as if they were born from someone's wild imagination. But something unusual caught his eye that day, a small cage tucked away in the corner of a dusty stall. Inside, a tiny alien sat perfectly still. Its skin shimmered like silver in the dim light, and its large black eyes watched Jackson as if it understood everything about him. A sign above read, "Mute Alien Penny Sale." Most buyers ignored it, muttering that it looked weak or strange. But Jackson felt an odd pull, a curiosity he couldn't explain. "Is she really mute?" he asked the stall keeper. The man shrugged, a lazy smirk on his face. "Bought her cheap. Don't know if she talks. Don't matter. She's yours if you want her." Jackson hesitated. Something about the alien's gaze made him pause. It wasn't fear. It wasn't anger. It was something else. Intelligence. Awareness. He decided impulsively and tossed a few coins onto the counter. The keeper barely looked at him as he unlocked the cage. The alien didn't react immediately. Jackson reached for her shoulder, and suddenly she screamed, "Run!" The sound was sharp, almost piercing, unlike any creature he had ever heard. Jackson froze, startled, and the alien's black eyes darted toward the crowd. Then he saw them. Shadowy figures moving quickly through the market, weaving around stalls and people. "They're coming," the alien hissed, her voice trembling but filled with urgency. Before Jackson could ask what she meant, she yanked him toward a narrow alley. His legs moved instinctively, following her as she ran faster than any human should have been able to. Market-goers yelled, goods tumbled, and the clatter of boots echoed behind them. Jackson realized then that the mute alien was anything but helpless. They turned sharply into an abandoned building, and she activated something on her wrist. A faint blue glow that created a shimmering wall of light. When the pursuers arrived, they hit the barrier and recoiled. Jackson's heart pounded in his chest as he tried to catch his breath. You're not really mute," he said, finally finding his voice. She shook her head quickly, still alert. "Not allowed. They will—" Her words trailed, and Jackson could see the panic in her expression. "They?" he asked. She pointed to the alley, her eyes narrowing. "Syndicate, they—" Enslaved, Jackson swallowed. He had heard stories of the Galactic Syndicate, the organization that kidnapped and sold aliens across the stars. He had never imagined he would encounter them up close. And now somehow he was part of it. "Okay," he said. "We need to get out of here." The alien, who had yet to give her name, nodded and led him through twisting corridors and hidden exits. She moved with a precision that made him feel clumsy in comparison. Every corner, every doorway seemed calculated. Jackson realized that she wasn't just running for survival. She was planning every step. As they emerged onto a quiet street, he tried to speak again. "Why did you shout run? What would have happened if I didn't?" She glanced at him, her large eyes reflecting a mixture of frustration and curiosity. "Would be dead or worse." Her voice was soft now, almost a whisper. Jackson's mind raced. He had bought a mute slave for pennies, expecting perhaps a quiet companion or a curiosity to show off. Instead, he had purchased someone far more dangerous and capable than he could have imagined. They found refuge in an abandoned spacecraft at the edge of the market district. Inside, it smelled of dust and old oil, but it was safe for now. The alien lowered a small metallic panel on her wrist and it blinked, scanning the room. Jackson watched, fascinated and bewildered. I'm Jackson," he said. She paused and studied him for a long moment before answering. "Sira," she said simply. "Sira," he repeated. The name sounded light and strange on his tongue, yet it seemed to suit her. They sat in silence for a few minutes, catching their breath. Jackson's curiosity got the better of him. "Sira, why were you in that market? Why let people think you were a slave?" Sira looked down at her hands, then back at him. "Trap, find help." "Only humans can," Jackson blinked. "Humans? You mean me?" She nodded, her black eyes serious. "Didn't expect." Jackson shook his head slowly. He had no idea what he had gotten himself into. He had assumed he was simply rescuing a helpless alien, but now he realized he had stumbled into a much larger problem. Sira was not a victim. She was a fighter, an operative escaping an interstellar organization that enslaved and exploited innocent beings. "What do we do now?" Jackson asked, finally allowing the weight of the situation to settle on him. Sira tapped a few buttons on the ship's control panel, and a holographic map appeared. Stars and planets glowed in the dim light. She traced a route with her finger. Outpost, humans, safe, need help. Jackson followed her finger. The path stretched across dangerous sectors of space, through asteroid fields and syndicate-controlled territories. That's a long way, he said, swallowing nervously. We have no choice, Sira replied. As he studied the map, Jackson realized that Sira's skills went far beyond what any human could match. She could manipulate energy, anticipate movements, and handle technology with precision he had never seen before. He wondered how she had survived alone for so long. Suddenly, alarms on the ship blared. Red lights flashed, and a small screen showed several ships approaching fast. Syndicate hunters. Jackson felt a surge of fear, but Sira remained calm. Hold tight, she said. The ship lifted off the ground with surprising speed. Jackson gripped the controls, trying to keep up, while Sira guided him through evasive maneuvers. Blasts of energy struck near them, rattling the hull, but Sira's hands were steady. She ducked and twisted, redirecting power to shields and engines. You're amazing, Jackson said, barely able to hear himself over the alarms. We must survive, Sira said. Cannot let them catch. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time seemed to warp under the intensity of their flight. Jackson began to understand Sira not just as an alien, but as a symbol of resilience. She had been underestimated, trapped in a market as a mute slave, yet she was clever, strong, and courageous. Eventually, the ships pursuing them were left behind, damaged and confused. Jackson exhaled a long breath, leaning back in his seat. We made it, he said, though his voice lacked conviction. Sira didn't respond immediately. She tapped a few more commands, and the ship slowed as they entered the shadow of a large asteroid. Hide here. Temporary, she said. Inside the asteroid's cavernous interior, the ship powered down. They both sat in the quiet hum of dormant systems. Jackson finally looked at her properly for the first time. Sira, I thought I was just buying a curiosity today. I didn't expect to be running for my life. Sira's eyes softened slightly. You helped. Did not have to. Most humans, Yanam, would not. Jackson felt a mixture of pride and guilt. Pride because he had acted without thinking of himself, and guilt because he knew the danger was far from over. I don't know if I'm ready for this, he admitted. Sira leaned slightly closer. Do not need ready, need survive. Together, maybe. Her words trailed off, but her meaning was clear. They were allies now, bound by circumstance and trust. As the stars shimmered through the asteroid cavern, Jackson realized that his life had changed in a single day. He had thought he was buying a cheap curiosity. Instead, he had freed a fighter, a strategist, and a being of extraordinary skill. Together, they would face dangers no human had dared confront, and Jackson was determined to prove that even an ordinary human could rise to extraordinary challenges. For the first time in a long while, Jackson felt a spark of excitement amidst the fear. This was no longer a quiet life of trading and small adventures. He was part of something bigger, something dangerous, and something undeniably thrilling. And beside him, Sira's sharp gaze reminded him that the universe was full of surprises, and heroes came in all forms, even small, silvery-skinned ones labeled mute. Jackson stared at the holographic map Sira had activated, tracing their path to the hidden human outpost. The route was dangerous, twisting through asteroid fields and sectors controlled by the Syndicate. He could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on him. He hadn't just bought a mute alien. He had become part of a mission that could cost both of their lives. Sira sat beside him, calm and focused, her black eyes scanning every detail. Despite her small frame, she carried herself with a presence that made Jackson feel both protective and inspired. She moved her fingers over the control panel, adjusting settings, activating stealth shields, and rerouting power to the engines. We must be careful, she said simply. Jackson nodded. I know. But how did you survive alone all this time? You're incredible. Sira's lips curved slightly into what could almost be called a smile. Trained. Prepared, never. Trust Syndicate, only chance survive. They left the asteroid in silence, navigating through the first of many fields. Rocks of all sizes floated in the void, some as small as a pebble, others larger than a city block. Jackson's hands gripped the controls tightly as Sira guided him. her voice calm but precise. Left, now shield. Divert. He obeyed instinctively, swerving the ship through a narrow opening. A massive rock struck the hull, sending the ship shuddering. Sparks flew, alarms blared, but Sierra's steady hands on the console stabilized the energy flow. Jackson could hardly believe what he was seeing. She was a master of survival, anticipating dangers he hadn't even noticed. Hours passed in tense concentration. They ate small rations, drank water recycled through the ship's system, and rested when possible. During these moments, Jackson began to learn more about Sierra. She spoke sparingly, each word chosen carefully, revealing fragments of her life. She had been captured as a child, trained as an operative to serve the syndicate, and eventually decided she would never obey them again. She had faked her muteness to escape detection, using her silence as camouflage until someone worthy could help her. Jackson listened, fascinated. So all this time you were pretending to be weak? People thought they could own you? Sierra's gaze darkened. They underestimated. That weakness, my advantage. Jackson felt a surge of admiration. Humans often struggled against superior forces, relying on courage, wit, and unity to overcome odds. Sierra embodied these same principles, but her abilities were far beyond any human he knew. She had been underestimated, trapped, and yet she thrived. He realized that even an ordinary human could learn from her, could rise above expectation, and could fight alongside someone extraordinary. Their journey took them into a region of space littered with remnants of old battles, destroyed ships, drifting wreckage, and the eerie glow of unstable energy fields. It was here that the syndicate struck again. Multiple ships emerged from the shadows, cutting off their path. Jackson's heart pounded as Sierra immediately assessed the threat. Prepare. Weapons, Fight outside. Jackson hesitated. You want me to stay here? Sierra's eyes met his.
You fly,
Cover. It was terrifying to think of her facing enemies alone, but he knew she was right. Jackson gripped the controls, navigating the ship while Sierra activated external weapon systems. Energy pulses fired from the ship's hull, targeting the syndicate vessels with uncanny accuracy. Jackson marveled at her precision. Each move was calculated, efficient, and lethal. Yet there was no unnecessary violence. Sierra only disabled or drove them away. One ship, larger and faster than the others, managed to latch onto their hull with energy clamps. Sierra's hands flew over the controls, and with a pulse of energy, she tore the clamps away and sent the enemy ship spinning into the wreckage. Jackson held his breath as the chaos unfolded around them. He had never imagined a human or even a human-sized ship could survive such an encounter. Finally, the last of the syndicate ships retreated, damaged and confused. Jackson exhaled, shaking with adrenaline. That was insane, he said. Sierra's gaze softened slightly. Survive. Must. Learn. Trust. Jackson realized that her words were not just about him, but about humanity as a whole. Humans were underestimated across the galaxy. They were seen as fragile, slow, or predictable. Yet here he was, navigating a ship through deadly territory alongside a being far stronger and faster, contributing in his own way, proving that courage and quick thinking mattered as much as raw power. They rested briefly in a hidden asteroid base Sierra had discovered. It was old and abandoned, but it offered shelter. Jackson used the time to repair minor damage, while Sierra checked the ship's systems and replenished the energy shields. During their rest, they talked quietly. Jackson asked her about the syndicate, about why they enslaved beings, about why anyone could tolerate such cruelty. Sierra's answers were measured. Syndicate. Profit, do not care. Life only. Control. Jackson shook his head. It's wrong. No being should be treated like that. Sierra's eyes met his, bright and unwavering. You, human. Believe that enough. Must fight. The words stayed with him. It wasn't enough to survive. They had to resist. They had to show the galaxy that even a single human, working with courage and intelligence, could make a difference. The next leg of their journey was the most dangerous. The hidden human outpost lay beyond the nebula rift, a region notorious for unstable energy storms and pirate activity. As they approached, the ship began to shake violently. Energy arcs danced across the hull, and navigation became nearly impossible. Jackson's hands flew over the controls, trying to keep them steady. Sierra's voice cut through the alarm noise. Stabilize, divert. Follow me. Jackson obeyed, following her instructions with precise timing. She guided him through the rifts, using the ship's systems in ways he never thought possible. Each adjustment, each calculation, saved them from disaster. He felt a deep respect for her. She was not just powerful, she was brilliant, courageous, and determined. At last they emerged from the storm. Before them lay the hidden human outpost, a cluster of ships and stations tucked into a dense asteroid field. Sira activated a beacon, signaling their arrival. Lights flickered, and the station's defenses recognized the signal. Within moments, docking clamps secured their ship. Jackson exhaled, relief flooding through him. They were safe for now. He looked at Sira, whose expression remained calm, but her eyes reflected the faintest hint of a smile. "We made it," she said softly. Jackson shook his head in disbelief. "I didn't just save a life today. I learned what humans and others can do when we work together. You're amazing, Sira." She looked at him, her gaze steady. "You helped that human choice strong." It struck Jackson then. This journey had been more than survival. It had been about trust, courage, and the ability of humans to rise to challenges no one expected them to handle. Sira's life had been under threat for years, yet it was a human's instinct to act selflessly that had made the difference. Inside the outpost, they were greeted cautiously by humans who had heard of the Syndicate's actions, but rarely witnessed its victims firsthand. Sira's skills were quickly assessed and plans were made for her next mission: resistance, intelligence gathering, and training others to fight back. Jackson was offered a role as well, not because of his strength, but because of his quick thinking, bravery, and humanity. As they settled into the outpost, Jackson reflected on the day's events. He had bought what he thought was a mute, helpless alien. Instead, he had gained an ally, a teacher, and a symbol of hope. Together, they had survived impossible odds, outsmarted dangerous enemies, and reached safety against incredible danger. Sira, once underestimated and labeled a slave, had shown that intelligence, courage, and skill were far more powerful than chains or labels. And Jackson had learned that humanity, ordinary humans, could be the unexpected force that changed the course of events, capable of courage, creativity, and loyalty in the face of overwhelming odds. As night fell across the asteroid field outside the outpost, Jackson and Sira stood together looking out at the stars. They were far from done. The Syndicate still existed, still hunted, still enslaved, but they had survived. And together they would fight, proving that even a human, underestimated and ordinary in the eyes of others, could rise to extraordinary challenges. For Jackson, the day he bought a mute alien for pennies had transformed his life. And for Sira, the human she once doubted had become her partner, her ally, and a symbol of hope for the future. The galaxy was dangerous, unpredictable, and vast. But with courage, trust, and intelligence, even the smallest of humans could stand against the greatest of threats. And together, they would.